Just to remind us of where we got to last time, and the overall thing is that we're on a journey together to discover love. That was the whole point. But this week I've got Stu Bradford with me, who I'd like to just introduce to you. So we're going to get into a bit of a conversation as time goes, but as I've been doing over the weeks, the last couple of times that we've done it, I'm going to refer you back to where we were before. And just to say that sometimes I say we'll see you in a few weeks' time or whatever, but there's no particular time schedule for doing this. So leave it with you anyway, whether you tune in or not. So we're on a journey together then, discovering the love of God. And really that's what love is about, is at the end of the day, God, the Bible tells us that God is love. So that's where we're coming from, He's the maker, the inventor of love, because he is love. And so last time we started to look at how our separation from his love and relationship came about through Adam. And if you recall, I was explaining to you last time that because Adam sinned, he disobeyed God, and so we're all born like that. We're born with this disobedience streak in us. It comes naturally, doesn't it? I mean, if you watch a couple of little kids, they may not be very old, but it isn't long before they can easily start pulling one another's hair, or they're misbehaving in some way. So it's quite natural for us to be like that, but we inherited it through Adam. So we saw that God cares about our separation from him. He cares about this void we all feel inside, this longing to be loved for who we are and not for what we do. He cares about that. And so we saw that he did something about it. And he sent his son, Jesus, to die for us so that we might be forgiven and restored to him. We've been looking for him all our lives, really. That's what this longing is. It's inbuilt in the human heart, in our inner being. That's what, when we refer to heart, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the secret place of our lives, where we think and feel and where we're motivated and so on. We're in a mess inside, secretly, and all our struggles really in life, they emanate from this feeling of separation inside. And so I encourage you to ask God to give you the faith and the grace to believe that Jesus died for you. Even if you were the only one, he would have still died for you. There's a thought. Even if you were the only human being, he would have still died for you, to have you reconciled back to his Father. So we've asked God to give us the grace and the faith to believe it. What now? Do I have to do anything? Yeah, that's great. I've asked him for the faith and grace to believe that Jesus died for me, that I might be reconciled to him, that I might be restored to the relationship, that I might know his love for me, for who I am. So where do we go from here? So I wanted to go to a passage in the letter to the Romans that the Apostle Paul wrote. He wrote to the people in Rome, the Christians there. He wrote to them, and he wrote this. Let me read it to you from Romans chapter 10, and verse is 8 and 11. And so, because this really helps us to understand what we need to do. What does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we are telling you about. What we're seeking to do is to encourage you to have the faith, to reach out to God, to reach out to His Son, and for you to be restored to Him. So that is, if you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. That is, you will be rescued from your plight, from the position you found yourself in. God will rescue you. He'll save you from it. For with the heart a person believes. So with the inner being, in your mind, your will, only you know what's going on inside. No one else knows that. So in that place, that secret place of your life, you choose to believe that Jesus is Lord. That's why we need God to give us the faith and the grace, because of ourselves, we would never do it. And so he does give us the grace and the faith to believe that His Son is the Lord, Jesus as Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, and you'll be saved. That's what it said in the previous verse. For with the heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation, resulting in you being saved from your plight. For the scripture says, whoever believes in Him will not be disappointed. How wonderful. There's so much disappointment in life, isn't there? We get disappointed. How many times have you been let down in your life? Disappointed through others who've let you down, or some system or other that has let you down. But God will not. God will fulfill what He says. God can be trusted. So to do this is very much a personal thing, you see. You are agreeing with God that you've sinned against Him. You're owning up. You're accepting responsibility for all your wrongs. You're taking responsibility for the real you with all your faults and failures, because we've all got them. But you're taking responsibility for it, and you're asking God to help you believe that He sent His Son to die in your place, to take your punishment and mine upon Himself. So this is a personal transaction, agreement between you and God, and you are asking Him to forgive you and heal you of your sin and restore you to relationship with Himself. It really is that simple. And He will make it simple for you if you ask Him. Just ask Him to help you to do it, and He will. It's not some slavish thing. It's not, now I've got to keep a load of rules and this and that. No, God wants to embrace you into a relationship with Himself where He'll love you into doing things. But you have to give Him consent. He's not going to take your will away from you. He's not going to take your freedom of choice away from you. I'm going to bring Stu in on this and I want to see what he thinks about what I've been saying, and so it'd be interesting to see, what your take is on it all.
I suppose immediately it comes back to mind of when this really came to a head for me, which was quite a number of years ago now. Well, more years than I can get to remember. And I'd been exposed to, I'd not had any Christian upbringing. So I had no religious background. And I had an encounter, all I can say is, through the course of a series of events, basically my parents invited me to a religious meeting, and I went to keep them quiet, to be honest. I wasn't seeking the truth. I realise now what you were saying earlier about this longing in my heart. I had it, but I didn't know what I was looking for, so I was looking for it in drink and all the things you do.
So would you say you didn't know what to do with yourself?
Yeah, I'd been pursuing basically a pretty pleasure-seeking lifestyle as a youngster, and a lot of my hopes and dreams had suddenly come to an abrupt halt. And I was thinking, they've not panned out how I wanted them to.
Yeah.
But again, it was quite sort of selfish in the sense of I didn't go thinking, I must go and find the truth.
All right, so I think I'm getting the drift.
Yeah.
That you went to keep your mum and dad happy.
Yeah. I listened to somebody speaking very, very much like you did just then, and and talking about Christianity, and I was at the time thinking they're sincere. They obviously believe what they're talking about.
Yeah.
What's it got to do with me?
Yeah.
And then all I can say is, during the course of the person speaking, I became aware. All I can say is I had an encounter. I became aware of a presence.
Yeah.
Which I didn't need anybody to tell me it was God. It was a strange experience. I just knew I was in God's presence, and boy, did I know I was not right with him. if you like what I mean. I was aware that this person was holy and just clean and pure, and I certainly wasn't.
Yeah.
And then whether it was at the time, it was as real as you and I sitting here talking.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really. At the time I was in a group of about 5,000 people.
Really?
Yeah. And I'd been very much on my guard. I didn't want to be caught in emotionalism or, persuaded by anything. So I was quite guarded. But it was like everybody else disappeared. And I was just aware of this presence. And I realise now it was God the Father. And whether it was because
you didn't realise that at the time.
No, I just knew it was God.
Yeah, you were aware of something very different.
Yeah, and the effect it had on my self was there was things I knew to be true, and I didn't know why I knew them.
Yeah,
I'd not been believing them.
Yeah,
and then suddenly they were like, "Oh, you're real."
Yeah,
and
well, had you heard things before then about?
As I say, I'd not had a lot of religious upbringing. I'd read a book by a chap called, I think is it Josh McDowell, More Than a Carpenter? About 18 months, 2 years before. And he'd made, I think, the argument about Jesus' reality.
All right.
And interesting enough, I'd understood the logic of his argument.
Yeah.
But it hadn't changed my life.
What was he doing, trying to disprove?
No, I think he'd originally set off to do that, but he'd ended up coming to the conclusion that Jesus was who he said he was, and he was using, I think, C.S. Lewis's argument. Jesus was either a liar, a lunatic, or he was who he said he was. And I'm thinking, intellectually, I was convinced about that. Even so much so, I went back to university and enjoyed having an intellectual argument about it with people, but I didn't believe it. No. It was strange, So there was clearly a bit of information in there. And the guy must have been preaching some of this in the meeting I was sat in as well, although I can't say I was consciously listening to him at this point, because I suddenly became aware that Jesus was the solution. It was almost like God was showing me Jesus is the solution to this intense feeling of I'm in the wrong here that I was having with this encounter with God.
So this was in a crowd really of about 5,000 people.
Yeah,
and yet you felt you couldn't, as though there was no one else there.
Yeah, it was very much like this. It was a one-to-one conversation suddenly.
So what I was saying earlier about this is a very personal thing.
Intensely.
Yeah.
Intensely personal. And we didn't have videos and stuff back when this happened, but I bought the audio cassette.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I remember listening to the audio cassette afterwards, and I can't find anything on the audio cassette of that could explain what I
had encountered.
It was a definite extra to what was happening there.
Right.
And as I said, I became aware that Jesus was the solution to this problem that I had with God. That I was not like he was, and I really needed to be.
Well, you've sort of definitely out of step with him.
Yeah. And it wasn't, but there wasn't a sense of, it wasn't like he was guilting me about it. It was just stark reality. It was like if somebody turned the lights on and you stepped into the room and you're going, I'm filthy. And somehow Jesus dying on the cross, he showed me, was the solution to that problem. So I can't tell you that it wasn't like anybody even persuaded me. I just knew it was true. So I came out of this sort of one-on-one moment and became aware again I was back in the big crowd, in time to hear the chap at the front say, if you want to get right with God, I want to invite you to come down to the front of the meeting.
Cool, that was a bit daunting.
My mother, who had taken me, was mortified, I think is the proper word, that something so un-British was taking place.
All right.
And she was turning to apologise to me because her rebellious son had been persuaded to go, and I was literally climbing over people to get down to the front, John.
Yeah.
There was an intense desire in me to do whatever it took.
Yeah.
To connect with,
I'm just thinking of folk who tune into this, and because many of them will be tuning in at home on their own, and so I just wanted to clarify really that it's not necessary to be in a crowd of 5,000.
No, and I was very much on the guard against that whole thing happening.
And I suppose the fact is that you, even in such a large crowd, you felt as though you were the only person there. Yeah,
and literally people to the left and right of me were completely oblivious that anything was happening in my heart like that.
Yeah, so really what that says to me is the fact that these folk who are sitting at home watching this on their own screen, they're very much on their own, aren't they? Alone.
Yeah.
Because that's the sort of thing we do, don't we? We go and we flick on our tablet or our laptop or whatever, and then we tune into whatever, and then we're on our own.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you felt as though, even in this massive crowd, you felt as though you were just the only person there.
Yeah.
I think that's encouraging for anybody listening in.
Yeah, when you say it to me like that, I can almost see God's graciousness to me.
Yeah.
He knew I was guarded against being swept in a crowd emotionally, so it's almost like he went, this doesn't this isn't about what everybody else is doing. This is
No.
about you and me.
Yeah, it's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
I think that actually, you know, that to me bears out what I was saying earlier, that this is a very personal thing. It's something you take responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
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 I think that's great.
And I think that was what the invitation was to connect with it personally.
Yeah.
Not just to go, oh, this is happening to me, but what do I do about this situation I found myself in, and how do I respond?
Yes.
To what God was doing.
And let me ask you, after this encounter, after this happened, did you ever have any thoughts of doubt that did that really happen? Or
Oh yes, absolutely. The first 24 hours were wonderful because I felt like I was walking on air.
Yeah.
I think, and I realise now it was a weight. It was that weight of your conscience and so forth being satisfied and appeased. But it wasn't soon afterwards where I was thinking, you made all that up. That was what are you doing? You know. So it was almost challenged immediately.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I could say the same thing, and I've over the years you speak to loads of different people, and it seems to be quite a common experience. I'm probably asking you that for the benefit of those who tune in, that just because you get, as it were, tempted to say, oh, what was that all about? Nonetheless, there is a reality to it. So
I found it quite helpful. I'm not sure whether it was yourself or it was somebody soon up. It was probably quite a few months after this, but somebody pointed out to me that it's only people who are alive worry about dying, and it's only people who have connected with Jesus worry about losing the connection.
Ah, that's interesting.
You know, if you go out and talk to somebody in the pub, they're not worried about whether they've got a relationship with Jesus or not.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, if you talk to his people, they go, oh, I'm in a bit of doubt about it. But it helped me think, oh yeah, it's only because I've got something that I can be tempted to worry about losing it.
That's interesting because, again, I'm thinking of folk who, would do this privately.
Yeah.
And, they, I don't know, I mean, obviously sharing it with other people is like, that's a different kind of kettle of fish, isn't it? And so I'm just thinking of someone, they're watching this on their tablet or their laptop or whatever, and suddenly they find themselves in that situation that, wow, there's something happening here that's, not just unusual, but there's definitely something happening here. And I think it speaks to me as well of the graciousness of God that He does that. He makes it so obvious to you, which, because I'm thinking about what I said earlier about the asking Him for grace and faith to believe Him, and it's like He goes, well, there you are.
Yeah,
I'm making it as easy as I can for you.
And I came to realise as this went on, I couldn't have even believed in Him unless He'd given. It wasn't like I went, oh, I'll suddenly sort of switch this belief on. The very fact that I wanted to believe in Him was because he was helping me to do that. And so that helped me as well, realise the very desire was what He was drawing me to Himself.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you also found, in the coming days that, you started to think, well, did that happen and all that sort of thing, which is I think is quite normal. But what you said, the quote, whoever said it to you, I think that was very good, really, wasn't it? That
it was very helpful. Just because.
Just repeat it and just.
Well, it's only those who are alive worry about dying.
Yeah.
it's only those who found Jesus will worry about losing him.
Oh, right.
And,
Yeah.
and so, you know, you realise that if you're thinking it's about, everything is only about what you've done,
Yeah.
it can be very unnerving. But when you realise you're responding to something he's done,
Yeah.
something's taken place in your heart that wasn't there before, you realise, oh, he did that. I know.
Yeah.
And it helps in the when it's being really tested and sort of challenged.
Well, and it's also, yeah, it's affirming, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's affirming to you that, yeah, no, I did experience this.
And the more those experiences happened quite a bit at the beginning, and then they die away, and it's like, well, no, I know now. It's
Yeah. Well, it's that sort of sense, isn't it, that I know because I know because I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that must also be God in His grace helps us to be reassured.
Yeah.
I think, unless you've got anything more to add, I think we'll leave it there. I think for this time, and then we'll pick this up again next time. Okay. So bye for now.